The morning sun cast long shadows across Haven's Edge Colony as Jiho Kim walked through the main compound. His boots clicked against the metal walkways that connected the different sections of the settlement. As the colony commander, Jiho started every day by checking on his people and their alien neighbors. 3 years had passed since humans first arrived on this distant planet. The world was rich in rare minerals and crystals that both species could use. More importantly, it was peaceful. The native Velkari had welcomed the humans with open arms and curious minds. Jiho stopped at the observation deck and looked out at the crystal gardens. The Velkari tended these strange plants that grew in perfect geometric patterns. Their crystalline skin patches caught the sunlight and threw rainbows across the garden paths. Elder Nari moved between the crystal trees with grace that still amazed Jiho after all this time. The Velkari were nothing like the aggressive aliens that Earth's military had prepared humans to meet. They stood about 5 feet tall with large dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. Their voices sounded like wind chimes when they spoke their own language. Most had learned basic human words, and many humans had picked up Velkari phrases. Children's laughter echoed from the research station nearby. Jiho smiled as he watched 5 young Velkari playing with Dr. Dayan Park. The juveniles barely reached her waist, but they followed her everywhere like devoted pets. Their crystalline patches flickered with excitement as Dayan showed them human technology. Dayan was the colony's xenobiologist. She had arrived 6 months ago to study the local ecosystem, but she had quickly become the juveniles' favorite human. They chirped and whistled around her, their way of showing happiness. Dayan had even learned to chirp back, though her human voice made the sounds come out rough and clumsy. "The little ones love her," Elder Nari said, appearing beside Jiho with that silent way the Velkari had of moving. "She's good with them," Jiho agreed. "Better than most humans are with our own children." Elder Nari's large eyes blinked slowly, which Jiho had learned was the Velkari way of showing amusement. "Your species surprises us every day, so gentle with the young, yet we know humans can be fierce when needed." Jiho nodded but didn't say much more. The Velkari had heard stories about human wars and conflicts, but they had only seen the peaceful side of humanity. Jiho hoped it would stay that way. The sound of heavy machinery came from the mining sector. Hyun Lee was already at work with his team, extracting the precious metals that made this colony profitable. Hyun was a big man with strong hands and a louder voice than most Velkari were comfortable with, but he was gentle around the aliens and always made sure his mining operations didn't disturb their crystal gardens. Minji Choi waved from the agricultural domes where she was checking the morning harvest. The domes produced food for both humans and Velkari, though the two species had very different diets. Minji had become an expert at growing both earth crops and Velkari crystal fruits. Her work kept everyone well-fed and happy. The colony ran like a well-oiled machine. Everyone had their job and everyone worked together. Humans and Velkari shared tools, knowledge, and friendship. It was the kind of peaceful cooperation that politicians back on Earth could only dream about. Jiho continued his morning rounds, checking in with Taewon Yoon at the communications center. Taewon was young but reliable, keeping the colony connected with Earth and monitoring all the electronic systems that kept them safe. "Anything interesting overnight?" Jiho asked. "Just the usual," Taewon replied, not looking up from his screens. "Supply ship from Earth is still 3 weeks out. Weather looks clear for the next few days, all systems normal." Dr. Sunwoo Kang was already busy in the medical center, giving health checkups to both human and Velkari colonists. Sunwoo had become something of an expert in Velkari biology, which was helpful since their crystal-based physiology was very different from human biology. "How are our neighbors doing?" Jiho asked. "Very well," Sunwoo said with a smile. "The juveniles are growing fast. Elder Nari's joint pain is better with the new medication I developed. No major health concerns for anyone." Security Chief Eunbi Han was checking the perimeter sensors when Jiho found her at the security station. The colony had defensive systems, but they were mostly designed to keep out dangerous local wildlife, not to fight wars. "All quiet?" Jiho asked. "Dead quiet," Eunbi confirmed. "The energy barriers are working perfectly. Wildlife activity is normal. No ships or signals detected anywhere in the system." Jiho felt satisfied with his morning inspection. Haven's Edge was exactly what a colony should be: peaceful, productive, and safe. Humans and Velkhari worked side by side, learning from each other and building something better together. As the day progressed, the normal routine continued. Children played while adults worked. The Velkhari tended their gardens while humans operated their machines. Meals were shared, stories were told, and plans were made for expanding the colony. Evening came with its usual beauty. The planet had 2 moons, and when they rose together, they painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. The Velkhari sang their evening songs while humans gathered around fires to talk and relax. Dayun sat with the 5 juveniles, teaching them a simple human card game. Their small hands struggled with the cards, but they chirped with delight every time they understood a new rule. Their parents watched with approval, grateful that their children had such a patient teacher. They learn so quickly, Dayun told Jiho when he stopped by. Sometimes I think they're smarter than we are. Different smart, Jiho said. But smart, yes. The juveniles looked up at Jiho and chirped a greeting. He had been trying to learn their language, but he wasn't as good at it as Dayun. Still, they seemed to understand that he was important and treated him with respect. As night fell, the colonists began to settle in for rest. Security systems activated automatically, sensors swept the surrounding area, and emergency protocols stood ready just in case. But no one expected trouble. Haven's Edge had been peaceful for 3 years, and there was no reason to think that would change. The last thing Jiho did before going to sleep was check the long-range sensors one more time. The displays showed empty space in all directions. No ships, no signals, no signs of anything dangerous approaching their quiet world. Far beyond the colony's perimeter, in the rocky wasteland known as the Scarred Badlands, something moved in, the darkness. The sensors were too far away to detect it, and it was too clever to trigger any alarms. It watched and waited, studying the peaceful settlement where 2 species lived together without fear. Soon, it would be time to hunt. The next morning brought strange news that would change everything at Haven's Edge Colony. Taewon-yoon was the first to notice something was wrong when he checked the overnight sensor data. His coffee grew cold as he stared at the readings from the Scarred Badlands. "Commander Kim," Taewon called over the communication system. "You need to see this right away." Jiho arrived at the communications center within minutes. His peaceful morning routine was forgotten as he looked at the display screens. The long-range sensors had picked up unusual energy readings during the night hours. The patterns were unlike anything in their database. "What am I looking at?" Jiho asked. "I'm not sure," Taewon admitted. The energy signatures appeared around midnight and lasted for 3 hours. Then they just disappeared. But look at this movement. Data. The screen showed heat signatures moving in coordinated patterns across the wasteland. Whatever was out there was big, fast, and traveling in groups. The thermal readings suggested at least 30 separate entities moving together with purpose. Could be a migration of local wildlife, Jiho suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. "That's what I thought too," Taewon said. "So I sent 3 scouting drones to investigate." Jiho's expression grew serious. "And?" 2 came back damaged. The 3rd never returned at all. The damaged drones were brought to the maintenance bay where Hyun-Lee examined them with growing concern. The metal frames were torn and twisted as if something with incredible strength had attacked them. Deep gouges ran along the hull plating, and several sensor arrays were completely missing. "What kind of animal could do this?" Hyun muttered, running his fingers along the damaged metal. "These drones are built to withstand storms and rock slides." The memory cores from the surviving drones held fragments of video footage. Most of it was too corrupted to make sense of, but a few seconds showed clear images that made everyone uncomfortable. Dark shapes moving faster than the camera could track. Glimpses of what looked like razor-sharp claws. And at the end of one clip, a brief view of something that looked like scattered bones and torn flesh. Dr. Sunwoo Kang was called in to examine the biological samples that the drones had collected before being attacked. His medical equipment wasn't designed for field biology, but he did his best to analyze what they had found. "This is disturbing," Sunwoo announced after several hours of work. The tissue damage patterns are unlike anything I've seen before. Whatever killed these animals used some kind of corrosive enzyme to break down the cellular structure. Meaning what exactly? Jiho asked. Meaning these creatures don't just kill their prey, they partially digest it while it's still alive. The bite patterns suggest multiple attackers working together to take down much larger animals. The news spread quietly through the colony. No one wanted to cause panic, but the scientists and security personnel needed to know what they might be facing. Dayun Park was studying the drone footage when Elder Nari approached her at the research station. "Dr. Park," the elderly Velkari said in her musical voice, "may I speak with you about what your drones discovered?" "Of course," Dayun replied, "though I'm afraid we don't know much yet." Elder Nari's crystalline patches flickered in patterns that Dayun had learned indicated deep thought or worry. The old Velkari looked toward the scarred badlands with her large dark eyes. "There are old stories," Elder Nari began slowly. "Legends that my people have passed down for many generations. Most of us believed they were just stories to frighten juveniles into staying close to home." "What kind of stories?" Dayun asked, though she had a feeling she didn't want to know. "Stories of the Ravagers, creatures that emerge from the deep caverns during times of celestial alignment. They hunt in packs and prefer the young of other species. The legends say they can change their appearance to hide from their prey until it's too late to escape." Dayun looked up at the sky where she could see both moons even in daylight. The 3 moons of this planet were approaching a rare alignment that happened only once every few years. The event was supposed to create beautiful light displays in the night sky. "When do the moons align perfectly?" she asked. "In 3 days," Elder Nari replied. "But surely these are just old stories. My people have not seen Ravagers in living memory." Despite Elder Nari's words, her crystalline patches continued to flicker with worry patterns. The 5 juveniles who usually played around the research station seemed to sense their elder's concern. They stayed closer to the buildings and chirped, less frequently than usual. Security Chief Yunbi Han didn't wait for more evidence before taking action. She began moving the outer research stations closer to the main colony. The scientists complained about losing access to their remote study sites, but Yunbi insisted on safety first. "I'd rather have angry scientists than dead ones," she told Jiho. The defensive systems were checked and double-checked. Energy barriers were tested at full power. Weapon lockers were inspected and ammunition was counted. Haven's Edge had never needed to use its military equipment, but everything was in working order just in case. Minji Choi noticed that the local wildlife was acting strangely. Small animals that usually came near the agricultural domes for food scraps were nowhere to be seen. Even the insects seemed to have disappeared from areas closest to the scarred badlands. "It's like they're all hiding from something," she reported to Jiho. That evening, the colonists gathered for their usual community meal, but the atmosphere was different. Conversations were quieter, and people kept glancing toward the wasteland. The Velkari sang their evening songs, but the melodies seemed sadder than usual. Dayun sat with the 5 juveniles as always, but they were less playful than normal. Their parents watched them carefully and kept them close. One of the smallest juveniles, barely 3 feet tall, kept looking at the darkening sky with obvious fear. "What's wrong, little one?" Dayun asked, in the simple Velkari phrases she had learned. The juvenile chirped softly and pointed toward the scarred badlands. Its crystalline patches were flashing in rapid patterns that Dayun didn't recognize, but Elder Nari's translation made her blood run cold. "She says the bad things are coming. She can smell them on the wind." As night fell, the long-range sensors detected the energy signatures again. This time they were stronger and much closer to the colony. Whatever was out there was no longer content to stay in the wasteland. The hunt was about to begin. Dawn came too early to Haven's Edge colony, but it did not come alone. As the first pale light touched the crystal gardens, the Ravagers struck with deadly precision and terrifying coordination. Taewon Yoon was monitoring the night sensors when the perimeter alarms screamed to life. His coffee cup shattered on the floor as he watched impossible readings flood his screens. The energy barriers that had protected the colony for 3 years were failing one by one. "Commander Kim to Communications Center immediately," Taewon shouted into his microphone. But his voice was barely heard over the growing chaos outside. The creatures that emerged from the ground were nothing like anything in the colonial database. They stood 8 feet tall on powerful hind legs, their bodies covered in dark chitin that seemed to shift and change color like living shadows. Their arms ended in blade-like claws that could slice through metal, and their compound eyes reflected the morning light with alien intelligence. Jiho Kim was running toward the communications center when the first Ravager materialized directly in front of him. The creature's chameleonic skin had made it nearly invisible against the metal walkway. Its mandibles clicked together as it studied the human commander with predatory interest. "Emergency Protocol 7, Jiho screamed into his communicator before diving aside as the creature's claws whistled through the air where his head had been. "All civilians to secure locations. This is not a drill." But the Ravagers were already inside the colony's defenses. Their ability to phase through energy barriers using some unknown adaptation meant that nowhere was truly safe. They moved through the settlement with singular purpose, ignoring the industrial areas and heading straight for the residential sections. Dr. Sun Woo Kang was in the medical center when he heard the screaming start. Through his window, he could see people running in all directions while dark shapes pursued them with horrifying speed. The creatures moved like liquid death, flowing around obstacles and leaping impossible distances. "They're hunting the young ones," Sun Woo realized with growing horror. Every Ravager he could see was moving toward the nursery areas where Velkari juveniles were kept safe during the day. Daeun Park was in the research station reviewing her notes when the attack began. The 5 juveniles who always followed her around were playing with her equipment, their crystalline patches flickering with innocent joy. The sound of alarms and screaming made her look up from her work. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the nightmare unfolding outside. The peaceful colony had become a war zone in seconds. Humans and adult Velkari were running for their lives while the Ravagers pursued them with mechanical efficiency. "Stay behind me," Daeun told the juveniles, though she doubted they understood the seriousness of the situation. Their species had known only peace for generations. They had no concept of predators or death. The research station's doors were built to keep out storms and accidents, not determined killers. Daeun heard the sound of claws scraping against metal, then the harsh screech of tearing steel. The reinforced barriers that should have protected them were being peeled away like paper. 6 Ravagers flowed through the destroyed doorway like a dark tide, their compound eyes immediately fixed on the 5 small Velkari huddled behind Daeun's desk. The creature's mandibles clicked in what might have been satisfaction or hunger. The juveniles began to chirp in terror, their crystalline patches flashing in rapid distress patterns. They had never seen anything like these monsters before. Their innocent minds could not process the reality of creatures that existed only to kill and consume. "Please," Daeun whispered, though she knew the Ravagers could not understand human speech. "They're just children." The lead Ravager tilted its triangular head and studied her with alien intelligence. Its chameleonic skin shifted colors, perhaps trying to determine if she was a threat or merely an obstacle. The other 5 creatures spread out around the room, cutting off any possible escape routes. Daeun's sidearm was in its holster on the other side of the room. Her emergency beacon was on the desk just 5 feet away, but might as well have been on another planet. The Ravagers blocked every path with their imposing presence. The smallest juvenile, the one who had sensed danger the night before, pressed against Daeun's legs and looked up at her with complete trust. Its large, dark eyes held no understanding of death, only faith that the kind human would protect them somehow. Commander Jiho Kim was trying to coordinate the colony's defense from the security center when Eunbi Han burst through the door. Her uniform was torn and blood ran down her left arm, but she was still fighting. "They're too fast and too smart," Eunbi reported breathlessly. "Our weapons barely slow them down. They're heading for the nurseries and schools. Every single one of them is hunting children." "How many?" Jiho asked while activating the colony's weapon lockers. "At least 40 that I've seen, maybe more. They came up through tunnels we didn't even know existed." Hyeon Lee and his mining crew were trapped in the industrial sector when a pack of Ravagers surrounded their position. The big man had grabbed a plasma cutter as a weapon, but he quickly realized it would not be enough. "They want the Velkari kids," one of his workers shouted over the sound of screaming metal. "They're not even trying to kill us unless we get in their way." Minji Choi was in the agricultural domes when she heard the juveniles crying for help. 3 young Velkari had been playing in her gardens when the attack started. Now they cowered behind the crystal fruit trees while 2 ravagers stalked them like cats playing with mice. "Not today," Minji said quietly, gripping a pruning tool that suddenly felt very much like a weapon. Back in the research station, the lead ravager took a step toward the terrified juveniles. Its claws extended to their full length, dripping with some kind of digestive enzyme that made the metal floor hiss and smoke where it touched. Daeun Park felt something change deep inside her chest. Every instinct inherited from millions of years of human evolution suddenly awakened. Every protective drive encoded in her DNA ignited like fire in her blood. She would not let these innocents die. Not while she still drew breath. Something ancient and powerful stirred within Daeun Park as the lead ravager prepared to strike. Her conscious mind, the part that wrote research reports and taught alien children card games, stepped aside. What emerged in its place was something far older and infinitely more dangerous. Daeun moved between the predators and the juveniles without conscious thought. Her body language transformed completely as millions of years of human evolution took control. She dropped into a combat crouch that her species had not used since the Stone Age, arms spread wide to cover as much protective space as possible. The 5 terrified juveniles huddled behind her, their crystalline patches flickering like dying stars. They did not understand what was happening, but they sensed that their gentle human friend had become something else entirely. Then came the sound that made the ravagers freeze in their tracks. It started deep in Daeun's chest, a rumbling that seemed to come from the very core of her being. The growl built slowly, gaining power and menace with each passing second. It was not the sound of a civilized scientist or a peaceful colonist. It was the territorial warning of an apex predator defending its pack. The lead ravager's compound, eyes widened in something that might have been confusion or concern. In all its hunting experience, it had never encountered prey that responded this way. Victims were supposed to run or cower, not stand their ground and issue challenges. Daeun's growl deepened and became something that had not been heard on Earth for thousands of years. It carried the weight of humanity's long journey from hunted to hunter, from prey to protector. Every ravager in the room felt the primitive power of that sound. "Mine," Daeun said in a voice that was barely human anymore. The word came out as a snarl that left no room for misunderstanding. "My pack, my young, mine to protect." The juveniles pressed closer to her legs, instinctively understanding that this terrifying human was still their guardian. Their fear began to change into something else. Hope, perhaps, or the beginning of trust in their protector's power. Daeun began to advance toward the ravagers, forcing them back through sheer presence and determination. Her hands, which had always been gentle, instruments of scientific discovery, curved into claws. Her teeth, normally hidden behind polite smiles, became visible in a snarl that promised swift retribution to anyone who threatened her charges. The lead ravager tried to circle around her, but Daeun's spatial awareness had heightened to superhuman levels. She tracked all 6 creatures simultaneously while maintaining her protective stance over the juveniles. When the second ravager attempted to dart past her left side, she intercepted it with movements too fast for normal human reflexes. Her hands found the creature's vulnerable joints with deadly precision. The ravager's chitinous armor, which had deflected plasma blasts and metal blades, cracked under the pressure of human fingers driven by protective fury. The creature's high-pitched shriek of pain echoed through the research station. The other ravagers hesitated, their predatory confidence shaken by something they had never encountered before. These small bipedal creatures were supposed to be easy prey, not dangerous opponents who fought with the skill of natural-born killers. Throughout the colony, other humans were experiencing the same transformation. The change rippled through the settlement like wildfire, awakening something that had been sleeping in every human heart since the day they left Earth. Hyun Lee felt the shift first in the mining complex where he was surrounded by ravagers, threatening a group of adult Velkari. The big man had been backing away from the creatures, looking for escape routes and trying to think like a civilized person. Then he heard Dion's growl echoing across the communication system that Taewon had left open. The sound triggered something primal in Hyon's brain. His retreat stopped abruptly and he turned to face the predators with new eyes. "My friends," he said quietly, positioning himself between the Ravagers and the terrified Velkari. "My responsibility. My fight." The plasma cutter in his hands was no longer just a mining tool. It became an extension of his will to protect, guided by instincts that his ancestors had used to defend their caves from saber-toothed tigers and dire wolves. Minji Choi experienced the awakening in her agricultural domes as she watched Ravagers stalking 3 young Velkari through her crystal fruit gardens. The peaceful farmer disappeared, replaced by something that her great-grandmother might have recognized: a warrior defending the innocent. Her pruning tools transformed into weapons as she channeled generations of human survival instinct. The QR, creatures that had seemed so terrifying moments before now, looked like problems that could be solved with enough determination and the right application of force. "Get away from them," Minji commanded, her voice carrying an authority that made even the Ravagers pause. "Find something else to hunt." Commander Jiho Kim watched the transformation of his people through security monitors and understood immediately what was happening. Humanity had not forgotten its origins. The peaceful colonists, the gentle scientists, the quiet farmers, they had all been sleeping guardians waiting for a reason to wake up. He opened every weapon locker in the colony and sent a single message to all human personnel: protect the pack. The change was not limited to physical transformation. Human intelligence, already formidable, became focused with laser-like intensity on the single goal of keeping the innocent safe. Tactical thinking that had been dormant for generations, suddenly activated in every human mind. Taewon-yoon coordinated defensive positions with military precision that surprised him. Dr. Sun Wukang analyzed Ravager biology in real time, finding weaknesses that could be exploited. Hyunbi Han organized hunting parties that began tracking the predators with efficiency that bordered on supernatural. The Ravagers, who had expected easy prey, found themselves facing creatures whose evolutionary path had been forged in conflict and tempered by the protection of the vulnerable. Every human in the colony had become what their species was always meant to be: guardians of the innocent. Back in the research station, Daeun Park continued her advance on the lead Ravager. The creature tried to use its size and natural weapons to intimidate her, but she showed no sign of backing down. If anything, its threatening postures only made her more determined. "You picked the wrong species," she told the creature in that inhuman snarl. "We are not prey anymore. We have not been prey for a very long time." The 5 juveniles watched in amazement as their gentle teacher became their fierce protector. They began to chirp softly, not in fear but in something that sounded almost like encouragement. They were witnessing the awakening of humanity's true nature. Not the polite scientists they had known, but the guardians their species was destined to become. The battle for Haven's Edge was far from over, but the tide was beginning to turn. The Ravagers had made a critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that soft, civilized humans would be easy targets. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. The transformation that began with Daeun Park spread through Haven's Edge colony like electricity through copper wire. Every human felt the awakening in their bones, in their blood, in the deepest parts of their DNA where millions of years of survival instinct waited for the right moment to emerge. Hyun Lee was the second to fully embrace what humanity truly was. In the mining complex, surrounded by 6 Ravagers who had cornered a group of adult Velkari, the big man stopped thinking like a peaceful colonist and started thinking like what he had always been: a protector. The plasma cutter in his hands became something more than a tool. It became an extension of his will, guided by tactical instincts that his grandfather had used in the wars on Earth. He moved with sudden grace, cutting through the first Ravager's chitinous armor like it was made of paper. "Stay behind me," he told the terrified Velkari in their own language, words he had learned during quiet evenings of cultural exchange. "I will not let them hurt you." The Ravagers had expected their size and natural weapons to intimidate the humans. Instead, they found themselves facing a species that had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain through intelligence, determination, and an absolute refusal to let the innocent suffer. Minji Choi felt the change take hold as she watched 3 young Valkyrie trying to hide behind her crystal fruit trees. The 2 Ravagers stalking them moved with the casual confidence of predators who knew they had cornered their prey. They were about to learn that humans had different ideas about who was the predator and who was the prey. "Wrong garden," Minji said quietly, gripping her pruning shears with new purpose. "Wrong planet. Wrong species to threaten." She moved between the hunters and their intended victims with fluid motion that came from some deep genetic memory. Her tools became weapons, her greenhouse became a battleground, and she became something that would have made her warrior ancestors proud. The first Ravager lunged at her with claws extended, expecting to brush aside another weak human. Instead, it met the pruning shears driven by strength that came not from muscle but from absolute determination to protect the innocent. Commander Ji-ho Kim watched his people transform through the security monitors and felt his own change beginning. These were not the gentle colonists he had led for 3 years. They were becoming something older and far more dangerous. Humanity's true nature finally unleashed. "All units, all personnel," he said into the colony-wide communication system. "Stop thinking like civilians. Start thinking like what we really are. We are the pack leaders. We are the guardians. We are the ones who stand between the darkness and the light." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every human in the colony acknowledged the order with voices that carried new authority and ancient purpose. They were no longer scientists and miners and farmers playing at being colonists. They were humanity unleashed, and they had a job to do. Taewon Yoon coordinated the defensive response with tactical brilliance that he did not know he possessed. His gentle nature as a communications officer fell away, replaced by the strategic mind of a natural-born general. He began directing human teams with precision that turned the chaotic battle into an organized campaign. Team Alpha, 3 Ravagers approaching the eastern nursery. Team Beta, intercept and eliminate. Team Gamma, secure the crystal gardens and evacuate Elder Nari. All teams, remember, we are not trying to drive them away. We are eliminating threats to our pack. Dr. Sun Wukang found himself analyzing Ravager biology with the cold calculation of a warrior scientist. His medical training, combined with newfound killer instincts to identify weak points in the creature's natural armor, his voice carried over the communication system with deadly precision. Joint articulation points between the second and third segments of the upper limbs. Vulnerability in the neck area just below the mandibles. Their eyes are sensitive to bright light. Use your emergency flares. Their chameleonic ability fails when they are in pain or extreme stress. Yoon Bi-han took this information and turned it into action. Security chief was just her job title. What she had become was a hunt leader coordinating the systematic elimination of threats to her pack. She organized the humans into hunting groups that moved with deadly efficiency through the colony. No mercy for things that hunt children, she told her teams. No quarter for creatures that threaten the innocent. We end this now. The Valkyrie throughout the colony watched in amazement as their human neighbors transformed before their eyes. The gentle beings they had known for 3 years revealed themselves to be something far more complex and infinitely more dangerous when the situation required it. Elder Nari, despite her age and the chaos around her, made her way to the communications center where she could observe the battle. Her large eyes took in every detail as humans became what they were always meant to be. "Now I understand," she said to herself in the musical Valkyrie language. "This is why the universe brought us together. This is why our species chose to trust them despite the warnings from other worlds." In the research station, Daeun Park had moved beyond simple protection into active hunting. The 5 juveniles stayed close behind her as she systematically eliminated the Ravagers that had dared to threaten her charges. Her movements were economical and deadly, wasting no energy on anything that did not directly contribute to keeping the young ones safe. The lead Ravager lay dead at her feet, its compound eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling. The other 5 had learned to give her respect, backing away whenever she advanced. They were predators, but they recognized something more dangerous than themselves when they encountered it. "You should have stayed in your caves," Dayun told the surviving creatures in that inhuman growl that seemed to come from humanity's deepest roots. "You should have hunted something else, someone else, anywhere else." Throughout the colony, similar scenes played out as humans embraced their true nature. Every ravager that had come to hunt children found itself facing adults who had evolved specifically to prevent such hunts from succeeding. The creatures' natural advantages, their size, their claws, their camouflage abilities, meant nothing against opponents who fought not just with weapons, but with the accumulated wisdom of millions of years of protecting the young and the innocent. Hyun Lee's plasma cutter carved through chitinous armor like it was designed for the purpose. Minji, Choi's farming tools became instruments of precise violence. Even Taewon Yoon, the gentlest soul in the colony, picked up a weapon and joined a hunting team when ravagers threatened the communications center where vital coordination was taking place. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt once humanity remembered what it was. The ravagers had made the mistake of threatening something that humans were genetically programmed to protect, the young and innocent of any species. As the day wore on, the surviving ravagers began to retreat toward the scarred Badlands. Their hunt had failed catastrophically. Instead of easy prey, they had encountered apex predators defending their territory and their pack. The humans of Haven's Edge colony had awakened something that would never go back to sleep. They had remembered their true nature, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The pack had awakened, and it was magnificent and terrible to behold. The sun was setting over Haven's Edge colony when the last ravager retreated to the scarred Badlands. The creatures that had arrived with such confidence now fled like shadows before the light, their hunt turned into a nightmare by humans who had remembered their true nature. Commander Ji-ho Kim stood in the center of the colony, surrounded by his transformed people. They were no longer the gentle scientists and peaceful workers he had led for 3 years. Something fundamental had changed in every human heart, and there would be no going back to what they had been before. The cost of victory lay heavy on everyone's shoulders. 3 humans had given their lives protecting Velkari juveniles: Corporal Minho Jang from security, Engineer Soyoung Nam from the mining operation, and botanist Kyung-ho Ryu from the agricultural domes. 2 adult Velkari had also died defending their young alongside their human friends. But the juveniles were safe. Every single young Velkari in the colony had survived the attack, protected by humans who had discovered depths of ferocity they never knew they possessed. The 5 who had stayed with Daeun Park throughout the battle now clung to her with even greater trust and affection. Elder Nari approached the gathered humans with slow ceremonial steps. Her crystalline patches flickered, in patterns that Daeun had learned to recognize as deep respect and gratitude. When the elderly Velkari spoke, her musical voice carried to every corner of the settlement. "My human friends," she began, using the common language that both species understood. "Today, you have shown us something that we suspected but could never truly comprehend until now." The humans listened in respectful silence. Many still carried weapons, and their eyes held the alert wariness of guardians who knew that danger could return at any moment. "For 3 years, we have known you as scientists and miners, as farmers and engineers. We have seen your gentleness with our young, your patience with our customs, your willingness to share your knowledge and your food. We thought we understood what humans were." Elder Nari paused, her large eyes taking in each human face before continuing. "Today we learned that everything we knew about your species was only part of the truth. You are gentle, yes, but your gentleness exists alongside something far more powerful. You are peaceful, but your peace is the peace of those who are strong, enough to choose mercy over violence." Daeun Park felt the 5 juveniles press closer to her legs. Their crystalline patches were flickering in patterns she had never seen before. Not fear or distress, but something that looked almost like worship. "The galaxy has many species," Elder Nari continued. "Some are natural warriors who fight for territory or resources. Others are pure pacifists who cannot harm any living thing. But humans are something different, something unique. Hyon Lee still held his plasma cutter, though the weapon now seemed almost ordinary after what he had accomplished with it. His gentle nature was returning, but underneath it lay the knowledge that he could become dangerous again if the need arose. "You are guardians," Elder Nari said simply. "Your species evolved not just to survive, but to protect. When the innocent are threatened, you become something that even the most dangerous predators learn to fear." Commander Jiho Kim stepped forward, his own transformation still visible in his posture and the alertness in his eyes. "Elder Nari, we need to talk about what this means for our colony. What happened today cannot be ignored or forgotten. We need new protocols, new training, new ways of thinking about our role here." The elderly Velkari's patches flickered in what Daeun recognized as agreement. "Yes, Commander Kim. But first, you must understand something important. This is not the first time Velkari have allied themselves with Guardians. Our species have been searching the galaxy for protectors for many generations." She gestured toward the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "We are not warriors. We cannot defend ourselves against predators like the Ravagers, but we are wise enough to recognize those who can defend us. This is why we chose to trust humans despite warnings from other species who called you dangerous." Dr. Sun Wu Kang, who had spent the day treating both human and Velkari wounded, looked up from his medical supplies. "What kind of warnings?" "That humans were unpredictable, that you could be violent without provocation, that your species was too dangerous to trust." Elder Nari's patches flickered with what might have been amusement. They were right about the dangerous part, but wrong about everything else. Taewon Yoon, still coordinating communications with outlying settlements, turned from his equipment. "So this was planned? The alliance between our species?" "Not planned, exactly," Elder Nari replied. "But hoped for. My people have been looking for Guardians for a very long time. When we heard about humans, we sent observers to study your species. What they reported back gave us hope that we had finally found what we were searching for." Minji Choi, her farming tools still stained with Ravager blood, frowned thoughtfully. "What did they report?" "That humans would adopt orphaned animals from other species. That you would risk your lives to save creatures you had never seen before. That your young ones played games about protecting imaginary friends from imaginary monsters." Elder Nari's voice grew warmer. "They reported that humans seemed to have an instinctive need to protect the innocent, even when it cost them greatly." Yoon Bihan was checking the perimeter defenses, but she could hear every word of the conversation. "And you decided to test this theory by establishing a joint colony?" "We decided to offer you the chance to be what you were born to be," Elder Nari corrected gently. "Guardians of the innocent, protectors of the vulnerable. The role your species has been preparing for since you first stood upright and decided that the weak deserved protection." As night fell completely, the colonists began the work of rebuilding and healing. But the atmosphere was different now. The humans moved with new confidence and purpose, while the Velkari looked at their human neighbors with obvious reverence. Daeun. Park sat with the 5 juveniles, teaching them a simple card game as she had done countless times before. But now the young Velkari looked at her with eyes that held complete trust and absolute faith in her ability to keep them safe. "Dr. Park," the smallest juvenile chirped in carefully practiced human words, "will you always protect us?" Daeun felt the same fierce protective instinct that had awakened during the battle. It was still there, waiting just beneath the surface of her civilized nature. "Yes, little one," she replied in both human and Velkari languages. "Always and forever. That is what Guardians do." Commander Jiho Kim was already drafting new protocols for the colony's defense. The gentle settlement of peaceful researchers would continue to exist, but it would be backed by the knowledge that every human could become a deadly protector when circumstances required it. 3 days later, a message beacon launched toward Earth and the other human colonies. Its contents would change how humanity saw itself and how the galaxy saw humanity. "We have remembered who we are," the message began. "The galaxy may see us as scientists, miners, farmers, and explorers. They may think we are soft because we choose peace over conflict. But when the innocent are threatened, we become what we have always been, guardians of the vulnerable. We offer our protection to any species that needs it. We offer our strength to those who have none. We offer our determination to those who face hopeless odds. This is humanity's true calling among the stars. Not to conquer or to rule, but to stand between the darkness and the light, to be the shields that protect the innocent from those who would harm them. The message continued with technical details about the Ravager attack and the human response, but its real power lay in its final lines. The pack has awakened, the Guardians are ready, and we will answer the call wherever it comes from, whatever the cost. Within months, the first requests for human protection began arriving from peaceful species across the galaxy. Haven's Edge colony became the model for a new kind of human settlement, not just places where humans could live and work, but places where the innocent could find safety under the protection of Earth's children. The Velkari had been right. Humanity had found its true purpose among the stars. They were not conquerors or explorers or even pioneers in the traditional sense. They were guardians, and the galaxy would never be the same again.